Hi, good morning for me, and also good morning to you as well. How you doing today?
Good. How you read?
Doing pretty well. And I'm hopefully down where you are as well, but it's cooled down by about 10 degrees, in the last few days, which has been nice. So it's warm and sunny, but not. I need a very large umbrella to keep me out of the sun, warm and sunny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So I moved to PNW just a few months ago, so I'm getting used to this weather. So it's definitely be a great change for me. So
You're from East Coast previously?
I was in Chicago previously, so moved from the
Okay.
Midwest, to here, and I've been loving it.
Now even in Chicago, it can be pretty humid in the summers, right?
It can be. It can be
Yeah.
definitely. I think the big change for me has been that in Chicago, yes, the during the day it can be humid and a bit hot, and then towards the night, as the day wears off, it doesn't get that cool. Over here, I can see a significant temperature drop. Definitely, during the day it can be high 90s, and at night can drop all the way down to 40s, 50s, and 60s, which is I like it. I'm enjoying it.
I mean, we definitely have some really hot summer days now and record breakers,
Yes.
but the overall West Coast summers are, from a weather point of view, better than Central or East Coast summers.
Well, I moved here because of the winter, so I'm not complaining. I'm not gonna miss the Chicago winter for sure.
Exactly. We get snow, but up in the mountains mostly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on today. I know we've danced around communication and other stuff in between conference circles and just the MVP community in general. But it's always nice to be able to get a new face onto the stream, and certainly for a topic that I don't think it's been discussed with Semantic Link before, but we've never done a full session on it yet. And I know I've been saying at least this year, ever since some of the new announcements with it, of all the changes that have come to Fabric, the one that I think is the most impactful to the Power BI audience is the thing with that, and it's turning what used to be an in-stream product into something that can be an intermediate piece of the chain with a lot more things that can be done downstream from it using that and the automation potential. But before we even get into the topic, I'd love to give you a chance to do a bit of an introduction to yourself, background on who you are, maybe anything that you find interesting or topical about today,
Yeah.
and introduce yourself to the channel.
Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Reed. Been a long time viewer, so really glad to be here. So Sandeep, I'm a senior Power BI architect at Hitachi Solutions. Hitachi Solutions is a Microsoft Gold partner. So we use the entire Microsoft data stack, be it Azure Databricks, Synapse,
Hmm.
now Fabric, and obviously Power BI. My role as a Power BI architect is working with our enterprise customers, creating solutions that are enterprise grade, and then with Fabric as well as with Power BI and bit of Synapse as well. I am Microsoft MVP. In fact, I became MVP just very recently, earlier this year, but been part of the
Congratulations.
community. Yeah, thank you. Been part of the community for very long. Been using Power BI pretty much since it was launched. Have presented at a number of conferences. I'll be presenting in the FabCon too. In fact, I'll be talking about Semantic Link. I'll be talking about Semantic
Nice.
Link and then KQL. What else? We recently launched with Vancouver Fabric and Power BI user group with my friend Parv Chana. He is also an MVP from Canada. The last session we had was on semantic link. So I guess at this point you can guess I'm a pretty big semantic link fan. Um, yeah, and I write a blog at fabric.guru. So if you have not checked that yet, definitely take a look.
Down in the description, and as you go through stuff today too, if there's anything relevant or topical for any links, I'll make sure to drop those into the chat. And as always, for people in the chat today, if you have any questions, started with a Q, I'll bring it up to either Sandeep or myself, and things that are relevant to what we're going over, we'll answer during that kind of portion of the session and discussion today. Otherwise, we have the little Q&A at the end that we spin up for everyone to get a chance to also go and talk about some more open-ended things. But to your point as well, congrats on presenting at FabCon. I applied with Kurt to do the same session that we had done previously in the US one, but I think there was only 20 slots, so I'm I'm not surprised that they wanted to like make sure that people who hadn't had a chance to present before would get an opportunity to do that. But in my session, I actually learned a few things because Kurt is, I think, just one of the best people in terms of doing both uh, good summaries but deep dives on a particular topic with a lot of insights. And it was, um, what does fabric mean for your the semantic model? And we had a whole section on all the semantic link features. And I keep talking to like Rui Romano as well on some things that are public now, some things that aren't. But every time I see like, oh, did you know it could do this? Like, oh, there's a script that just snap of a finger that
That's
did
that.
something I would have needed 10 hours to do. So there's a lot of cool things to I think to automate,
Yep.
especially with that stuff. So uh, I do hope that it someday it evolves outside of needing a notebook specifically to do everything for the people who are scared of coding. But it's still a relatively easy to learn tool, especially when you can copy
Exactly.
paste a lot of templates. So like that's what
Exactly.
I do in Tabular Editor. I
There you go.
I'm familiar-ish with C sharp, but I would not put C sharp on a resume as something I know how to write. But I'm good at copy pasting and replacing the words that make it work with my model, and that's kind of what I do with a lot of notebook scripts nowadays with semantic links. So
And
with
that's
that though,
exactly
we're
the thing.
go
Yep.
ahead.
Yeah, that even for me, so I've been using Tabular Editor, I've been using C Sharp, but I have been relying on the community. So all the templates and all the codes and everything that has been developed and shared in the community, I use those. It's exactly going to be the same thing with
Yep,
Semantic Link and Python, right? So
exactly. And I there are if Mike Carlo hasn't already done it, I'm sure he likes to make repositories.
yes.
There's going to be a good repository at some consolidated one that will just have
Yep.
a reference to all of the formulas of how to do X, Y, and Z with deploying, automating, changing. I think the auto language conversion for translations and there's all sorts of really cool stuff. But we're discussing at least a lot of the potential of what it can do. As far as the topic for today, where would you like to get started on exploring semantic link?
Yeah, so I can share my screen and
That's what I want to
so
go to. There you go.
yep.
We're
So
good.
what I would like to do is maybe we can start off with the basics of semantic link. What semantic link is for those who are not familiar, and there would be quite a few, right? People, not everybody is on Fabric yet, and even those who are Fabric, maybe they are not either Power BI developers or they are Power BI developers, but maybe not very familiar with Python and semantic link in general. So Fabric, as you know, is let's just call it the big brother of Power BI. You have all the different workloads that are available within Fabric, which is notebooks, pipelines, data flow gen 2, Spark Compute, and all of these different things. What Semantic Link does is it allows you to use a notebook and using a Python API. So Semantic Link is essentially a Python library, which allows you to connect to the semantic model and then call the API, the Fabric and Power BI API under the hood. We have done this in the past. I've done this hundreds of times in the past. In fact, I wrote a blog like in 2021 that how can you connect to Power BI semantic model using Python, using Jupyter Notebook on your desktop. I've always been a big Power BI plus Python fan. I use Python even before Fabric were launched during my for my Power BI workflow because that's just how I think. Coming from a data science background, that's how I think, and do work on with my data for exploration and stuff like that. So coming to Fabric, I don't have to do any of that stuff. I don't have to create a service principal. I don't have to create an app, create an Azure resource, and then use Python and then connect and do all of that stuff. What Semantic Link does is based on who is logged in, it allows you to call all those APIs. It is all abstracted away for you, and it is very easy to use. It's already pre-installed on your Fabric compute, in your Fabric runtime. So there is no installation required. All you have to do is import it and then use it. So let me show you what I mean by that. So I have a workspace here called read, and I have a data set here or a semantic model called customer profitability. And what I want to do is not just look at that data set, but maybe how can I use Fabric in general or how I use Fabric in general during my development in Fabric, not just for Power BI purposes. So what I do here is first and foremost is import semantic link. So the way you import that, the base package, the core package is called SymPy, Sim for semantic, Py for Python. And then from SymPy, I'm importing a module called Fabric, and we're just aliasing that. You don't have to do that. We can just do import sympy.fabric, but this is just a nice shortcut. So think of this as a shortcut to import this module from SymPy library. And then DS is customer profitability, and then workspace. So let me just import that. I run this notebook or this cell particularly. And then let's look at what are some of the things that are available uh, in in semantic link or this fabric package. So if I go there, which is for directory, and then fabric, you'll see all the different methods that are available within semantic link. So which is if I scroll down here a little bit, you'll notice a pattern that there are some create functions, then there are some get functions, and then there are some list functions. In fact, there are quite a few of these list functions, and then there is read and upload and the rest of the methods. These list functions, so if I want to look at something, fabric.list, and get a list of workspaces that I have
Mhm.
in my tenant, so fabric.list workspaces, and it gives you all the workspaces and all the information about all different workspaces. Now, previously, if you had to do something like this, you would use PowerShell or you would use Python, but then create service principals and all that. Why is this important is because when you're working in fabric especially you create the medallion architecture or you're managing the entire tenant as a Power BI or fabric admin, and you need to get to this data very quickly, get these which of my workspaces are in or are on a dedicated capacity like a premium or fabric, which ones are on PPU. So you can create your own catalog or create a dashboard based on top of that without doing anything. Now notice in this case, I didn't have to pass any authentication, right? Because this is already taken care of for you under the hood by Semantic Link, that it does auto auth or it generates the token that's generated on the driver. It's passed automatically to this function, so I don't have to do that. Now, this is based on uh, the access that I have to these workspaces. So if I'm an admin of only 5 workspaces, I only see 5 workspaces. If I'm an admin for the entire tenant, I should be able to see all the workspaces in the tenant.
Because you're already inside of the environment essentially, so
Correct.
there's no need to VPN or do any
Nothing.
authentication because you authenticated by logging into the Fabric portal.
Correct.
Yep.
Then if you want to look at the list of all the data sets that are within, they haven't changed it to semantic linky, semantic model yet, but list of all the data sets here, you will see the list of datasets. Now, notice here that when I said list dataset, I only got one dataset in this case. And that's because if you want to look at, get some help on a particular function or a method, you just add a question mark at the end of it, and then you will get nice docstring on that this function
Mm.
is fabric.list workspaces. You use it to get a list of all the data sets, and the parameters that it accepts is a workspace and the mode here in this case is XMLA. So by default, if you do not pass anything, it will always default to the current workspace that you are in. So it looks at this notebook is in a workspace called read, and then it will just give me that list of the data sets within that. If I need to get a list of data sets that are within a different workspace altogether, you would pass workspace is equal to, let's say, sales, and I'll get a list of semantic models that are within that workspace. So that's how you do that. Um, one thing that I just want to point out in this case, if I go here, you'll notice that the mode in this case is XMLA, like the XMLA endpoint. And as you know, XMLA endpoint is only available for Fabric or Premium or PPU workspaces. So basically PPU workspaces. So what if you want to get a list of dataset or access the dataset that is uh, in a pro workspace, a shared capacity, basically? Then in that case, I think I may have something that is not, let me check. Okay, so this EAM, let's change that to a pro premium. And if I now go, if I do just list workspaces and datasets or list datasets within a workspace, by default, it will always go to XMLA and it give you premium. But if you set the mode is equal to rest and then workspace is equal to EAM, hopefully this will work. Yeah, there you go. So if you want to get a list of data sets that are in Pro Workspace, you just have to change that to REST. And what this is doing is essentially, instead of using the XML endpoint, it is switching over to calling the REST API that's under the hood. That's all abstracted away from you. So it's calling that API using REST method and then giving you the list of the data sets.
Yep.
We can, yeah.
I was just going to say, just the sheer number of options and functions in there to fetch data so easily. Like I'm barely scratching the surface of this. Again, like I like to use my comparison to what can technically be done with C# on a model in Tabular Editor. Like I maybe have a dozen common functions that I use with this. I'm up to like a couple in here, but there's hundreds of things theoretically you could probably end up doing. It's such a powerful tool.
Yeah, and especially if you are if you are a Power BI admin, I mean, this is your dream tool because you can get a list of everything that you can possibly think of with just a couple of things, and it's very intuitive, right? I want the list of all the gateways that are in my tenant. There you go, list gateways. If you're an admin on those gateways, you get a list of all those gateways. And the best part about all of this is with like the previous methods we had, we were able to get the same data. And to your earlier point you were making, that it doesn't stop with that, right? Now, because we are in Fabric, the data set or the data frame that I get out of this, it is a data frame, and I can save that to the lakehouse and then create my own catalog of all the different items that I have, be able to monitor those things, snapshot those things, so that I can keep track of all the changes, keep track of what's going on in my tenant or in my capacity, or even in my workspace specifically, and make sure that everything is running smoothly as expected. And if anything comes up, hey, you can set up an alert and get an alert of any changes.
Yep.
So those are the list functions. You can also get a list of tables exactly like that. One additional thing with this is, let me go back to, okay, so let's say we have a list, and then let's go to list tables. And for the tables in this case, I'm going to go to the data set, which is TS, and it will give me the list of the tables, which is within the data set. Let's see what this is. A data set DS not found in read, because I need to just run this real quick, and not a string. There is an additional argument here called extended. Right now, it just gave me description, hidden category, and then type. If I use extended is equal to true, give me one additional thing here. You get a row count of the table that is for each of the tables. So which is pretty nice. But where this is super powerful is if I change this to list of columns, and not the data set, but the table that I want to access in this case is the fact table, which is this fact table, which I have 47,000 rows, and then extended is equal to true. Now just watch this. You get pretty much the entire thing that you can get in Vertipack Analyzer. Everything that you can think of, which is the temperature, the hierarchy, the dictionary size, the data set size, total. I mean, this is truncated. There are a lot many more columns here in here. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, it's has all these different things that you could only get access to in Vertipack Analyzer. Now, the question that I have seen come up in the community and in the discussions in general. So, what is the difference between this and, let's say, DAX Studio, and between this and Tabular Editor? And is this meant to replace those tools? And the answer
Yeah.
is absolutely not, right? Because this is fabric specific. This is, you won't necessarily use this during development. You would still rely on the third party tools like DAX Studio and Tabular Editor during development, and go through your process of doing things. Where this is helpful is for monitoring, for optimization, or because I can just loop over all the workspaces that I have access to. So in this case, the workspace is read, right? The workspace is called read, but I can change this into for workspace in fabric.list workspaces dot id, I believe. And now all I have to do is list columns, data set, get a list of, or change this to list of data sets. So list data sets, and then and change this workspace to W. Now I'm just looping over all the different workspaces, and then getting all the data sets. And then I can go further, list of all the tables and list of all the columns. So this allows you to create a nice catalog. Let's say you have 5 production workspaces that you want to monitor. This is an easy way for you to do that. You can just automate, loop over it, and then just save it to your lakehouse for further monitoring. Previously, if
The
you had
one
to
thing
do,
that I was just gonna
yeah,
say, the one thing that's different here to your whole point of like evolution, retirement, and anything else is, and you might be getting to this at some point, but the temperature
yeah,
that's over there, and I think that was, if I'm remembering my like train of thoughts of like how this conversation might have started, is there was a previous session where somebody talked about that, where what you can do with temperature is there's great tools like the Measure Killer, which gives you the ability to remove unused columns that aren't actually used in the report itself. But
mhm,
what about the columns that are seldom used when
yeah,
people are actually consuming that? And temperature can tell you that is maybe you have a column that's adding 5% to your model size, like it's a key or it's a value, whatever it is, along text string. If it's never being queried, ever, or the page is never accessed, you can see a low temperature of that, and that gives you an opportunity to get rid of it, because that's looking at usage across you, all users of that model, and how often I think it's being used in the query evaluations
yeah.
that are being run. And I think that's really really powerful. I've yet to do it, but with a client yet, but I see an opportunity of like an enterprise client who they can't get rid of any remaining unused columns from the model itself, but they're still trying to slim it down. All right, well, across 5,000 users, which page and which tables in the model or columns are being the least used, and is there opportunity to maybe change it somehow? So I
Yep.
think that's one of the newest innovations of this that I think was nearly impossible to do outside of probably some heavily advanced coding before Semantic Link came out.
Exactly. So the way I have used that exact same thing is, let's say you refresh your semantic model once a day. Before I refresh the semantic model, in my notebook, I can have, I can do this, and I'll show you in a bit, like about how you can do it. But you can get this, get the temperature, snapshot it, save it, and then you do that over a period of time, right? Then now you have that for let's say last 7 days or last 30 days. You aggregate that, and now you have the logs of how often that particular column has been accessed and at what frequency. And whatever has not been accessed for a long time or hasn't been accessed very long time, you can safely assume you won't necessarily go ahead and delete it, because it can be a column that's used in Power Query for something, and hasn't been touched. So you would
Yep.
still do your due diligence and make sure that it is safe to remove. But to your point, like, you did not have those tools available before to do that, unless you created Azure function, PowerShell script, the ADF, and ADLS Gen 2, and combine all of that together to get those insights, right? Or had log analytics enabled for your workspace,
Yep.
and then be able to know how to write KQL to get all of that information from KQL to make that determination. Now, all of that
And
is super accessible within a notebook with just a couple of functions.
And all these tables that you're exporting to can be written somewhere, as
Yeah.
well to be accessed. So, like in theory, what you could do is I don't actually know the temperature ranges. Let's just assume you care about anything with a temperature of 2 or lower, if that's accurate. You can stick that somewhere, and then you can have some queries running against it, stick it into a metric and a goal, and you can just be notified at any point in the future. Is there ever a column in a table in a model that drops below a certain or above a certain value? Be notified of it, and then you can go give that a review. But the admin can do that, so you have automated alerts to review issues with any of your models, for any type of metric that you would want, without having to do manual scans of this stuff.
Absolutely. So you can save, so the data frame that you get here, you can directly save this to the lakehouse. So
Mhm.
it is just to lakehouse, specify the name of the table that you want to create, and it will be exported out as a table to the lakehouse. But the temperature, unfortunately, there is no good way of knowing what is, well, there is no way absolutely of knowing what is the right temperature value. And I've tried to dig this up in the past. I've reached out to the product group as well to understand that a little bit more. But it's just like, higher the value, the higher the frequency of usage of that particular column, and then lower the value, lower it is. Now, you may have some cases where you may have used it for something and then may not have used it for anything else. Like, you have 100 users, 50 use it on one day
Exactly.
because they go to filter pane and apply some filter on it. So you would definitely want to look at it over a long period of time, a reasonable period of time, to make sure that you're not missing anything. Now, this is actually very, very helpful and critical for direct link, because, as you know, in case of direct link, when the direct lake data set is framed, it holds nothing in memory. You don't have anything in memory. As soon as the first user goes in, he queries the report, you get something in, then it fetches only those columns. It behaves exactly like the large data set format, only those columns into memory, and those columns are used, those columns are paged in. Now, in case of direct lake, when you refresh that semantic model again, it goes to cold cache. So next time, the next day, when the first user goes in, they will see longer latency in accessing the report, because now the data has to be again cached back into, or paged back into the memory. What you can do, and I've written a blog post on that as well. In fact, if anybody can find it, or I can bring it up, but I have written a blog post on warming up the direct lake cache, and it exactly does that. That where you're looking at which of the columns, before you reframe your data set, which of the columns were in resident in that were paged into memory, and what was the temperature. And then you would, before after you have framed the data set, you would write a DAX query, or you could write using Fabric again, but put those back into memory. In fact, Semantic Link, which labs, if I'm not mistaken, actually does that. It allows you to get the columns that were in memory before you reframe it, and then put it back into memory. and you will get like a import-like performance on direct-click semantic model.
And Donald dropped a link into the pre-warm cache,
Yes.
which is definitely very important as well for. And I think just as a quick note of that, the only way to automatically warm a model up into memory is you have to set a notebook script to ping it every so
Yes.
often. But
Correct.
I do believe at least it's been mentioned enough in the community that and I can't confirm it. I'm not actually sure of this, but I would imagine at some point there's going to be a toggle to be able to do that. If you have a specific model that always needs to just stay active, there will be a way to
Yeah.
like set it up somewhere in the UI for an admin without having to write it in the notebook. But yeah, that first hit when it's cold can be a lot slower until you get that near import direct link performance.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. So that has been brought up or has been discussed several times in the community. Like, could you like pin certain tables or pin certain columns, pin the memory of basically those things so that either it is incrementally cached in. So if there are no changes on the delta table based on the delta table history, then don't do that. And if there are changes, then maybe just break those in. Right now, it is all or nothing. But yeah, absolutely, having something like that, maybe a more UI driven approach would definitely help. Yeah.
Exactly.
So those are the list functions. You also have some get functions in Fabric. So if we go to fabric.get, you will see some get functions, which are artifact ID, lakehouse ID, roles, row level security permission. I just completed a project, or in fact, I'm in the process of very close to getting the project done. Is I created a set of notebooks for this client for security monitoring, for auditing their RLS, basically. So currently with RLS, yes, a developer can set up the RLS, but then you also have to make sure that they are not contributor plus on the workspace, which is often mistaken, right? Or you don't have right access to the semantic model, basically. But you as an admin, or you as somebody, especially for production data sets, if you want to do that, you can easily get the list of the roles, list of the security permissions that are set up on that semantic model, get the list of users who are on the in the workspace using semantic link again, and just cross check that who has the right permission on that data set and what role they have, and then what role they have in the RLS. And now you're able to cross check that, verify that, and then make sure that there is no RLS violation that's occurring before you promote it to prod or before you promote it to UAT. So it allows you to do that security
Okay.
auditing and
Okay.
monitoring very easily.
Somebody's still commenting on having to make paginated reports. I'll still die on the hill that like it's yeah, I've had to build them for some clients. I do not like the paginated report
I
builder.
do not.
You
I've,
like
I've
Chris Finland. I used to have to apologize to him. Like he's off the team now. He's on somewhere else. He moved on to AI, I think. But it it's just I don't dislike paginated reports in principle. I just don't like the builder. It's a shiny version of SSRS from 2008 with the ability to connect to a semantic model. I just
did
find
you
it painful because
see
it's so much coding.
did you see the web version of it that was launched yesterday?
Oh, is there a new?
Yeah. So
Okay.
if you go to the data set, and let's say I select this
Oh,
table,
this where you
okay,
can say you could right click and create paginated
and
report. Okay, so
create
I've tried
paginated
that.
report.
It was
Yeah.
really buggy. So
It
one,
is, and it doesn't have the feature parity, but at
yeah,
least
yeah.
it gives you a direction that hopefully it will be an improved version of the paginated report builder in the future.
There were so many bugs that were in that. Like yeah, like my sales measure, which has a format string on it, like it
Now,
has standard currency formatting. You drag and drop that. It
hmm
was the unformatted number with a bunch of decimals after it.
yeah,
One, the build pane is to the left of the filters pane. That was super confusing for me. I
Yeah,
tried it out actually for a financial training I did last week, and it was I like that where it's going, but right now it's very rough. It is very
yeah,
rough.
yep. It is, yeah, I agree on that one. Fortunately, I have not come across many paginated report projects. I did it once, and I was very glad when that project was over. That it is more than anything else. It's a lot of patience and a lot of Googling that I had to do. Because, like to your point, in some of the very easy stuff like formatting and then getting the parameters to work correctly and all that, it just was a total mess to work with. Okay.
Exactly.
The get functions, what I just wanted to quickly show is for those who create notebook pipelines and then work with like different, if you have to access data sets or any lake houses from other workspaces. One handy function here is fabric.get workspace id. Workspace id, you always go to workspace id and then copy it from the url, right? But with fabric.get workspace id, because you would always want a works id instead of a name, is you can just get the workspace ID, which is super helpful because this should be workspace name, I guess. Get workspace ID. Okay, let's just try this.
I realize
Workspace
I was
ID.
it was
Oh,
a
this is
short
the
question.
workspace ID. Yeah, so this is the workspace ID, the current workspace ID.
Mhm.
If you want to get a specific workspace, then they're just fabric dot you would get the workspace and then resolve the workspace id. So let's say, for example, I am here and I need to get the workspace id of a particular workspace. You can go to, there are some resolve functions here. So resolve workspace id, and I'll give it a name of the workspace, and it will give me the list of the, or it will give me the ID itself. And the same way, there is a resolve workspace name where you give it the ID and it will give you the name. Same thing for workspace or data set as well, because for data sets, for APIs, especially, you can't use the names. You can't use a workspace ID, workspace name, or a data set name. You have to provide the IDs, which is where this is super helpful, that you can just pass the name and get the ID of that workspace and then pass it to the API, Fabric API, to get additional metadata.
There was
Create, yeah, good.
well, and just I realized I missed a question earlier. So when if you never had a chance to circle back on the is it possible using any of these functions to see like what users have direct access to any of the reports?
Uh, Not directly. I don't know if Semantic Link Labs. Let's talk about Semantic Link Labs,
Mhm.
and we'll go there. So Semantic Link Labs is by Michael Kowalski. I guess he doesn't need any introduction, but he's the principal PM on the Power BI and on the CAT team at Microsoft. He's the one who created the BPA rules in Tabular Editor and a bunch of other tools, and he's open sourced that to the community. And now he has turned his attention to Semantic Link, where he has built a ton of new functions and wrappers around Semantic Link to further provide the same functionality, basically. So what I'm looking at is, so if you go to just search for Semantic Link Labs, which is right here, it is in the Microsoft repo, so it is an official Microsoft Python library. And in here, you'll see that you can use it for Direct Lake, for migration report, current scenario. Like, so what I'm interested in knowing is if there is a Direct Lake migration report. So I don't see anything that is directly gives you the reports. But having said that, what we can do is it's very easy to write or call the Fabric API. So what I can do is client is equal to fabric dot Power BI REST client. and this will create a REST client, and then just search for API, Power BI, users, workspace. And let's see, get users from this workspace, which all I need is this part. Grab that. And this is client.get this, and I need that fabric ID. See, we just talked about that fabric ID. So let's just do group ID in this case is fabric.workspace, get workspace ID. And then we just need to JSONify it. And of course, there is always something. So unauthorized user, did I forget something? This is a get request. Yeah, I'm not sure. But if you go to my website and click on semantic link, scroll down, and then you will see a blog post on using Fabric client to make Fabric REST API calls. And I've written a lot of blog posts essentially on how you can use Fabric client to call the APIs. So if there is any particular function like the list of users, or there are admin APIs that are not currently in Semantic Link, or there's some, I think, in Semantic Link Labs, but if there is something missing, you can always create that using the Fabric REST client, and then use that. So yeah, and then obviously if you can contribute to Semantic Link Labs, you can do that too. I know why this didn't work, so I have to add an F here to get that, and there you go. I have that. So this is me, and I have the list of users. So the way I use this for my
Nice.
current
Okay.
client, yeah.
Just real time solution to an answer is great.
And I actually use this for my current client because, as you know, the best practice is we never want to use a user. We never want to have a user. We always want to use the security group. So I looked over all the workspaces, got all the past that workspace here, and then got a list of all the users who have access, and then just filtered out the ones that are like uh, group type, and then left the user. And now I have the list of workspaces which have do not have security group
Yep.
used. So action item for them is, yeah, create a security group for them. You can also get the roles. So it also gives you the name of the user, the security, the permission that they should have on the workspace, and create it, apply it.
And there's so many little things that I can think of to monitor. So like as an example, workspaces with members with view only access, to me that's implying that like somebody doesn't realize that they should be making an app, because you
Yeah,
generally workspaces should be for development of either development
correct,
or testing, but not for consumption.
correct.
And I see a lot of clients who use those just because they don't realize that there's apps available
Yeah.
for that. So like be able to monitor that, or looking across workspaces, and is there anybody added to those with certain permission levels? Like, some way to be able to monitor best practices, since certain things can't be disabled, you just have to teach when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Correct. So let's talk about best practices because Michael Kowalski has us covered. So if you install Semantic Link Labs, which is pip install, or you would do ideally percent install, but pip install Semantic Link Labs and then import Semantic Link Labs. I'll go Semantic Link Labs SLL, and let's first run BPA on it, the exact same BPA with some enhancement. And let's go ahead and do that and see what you get. So I am running this BPA on this particular data set that I passed. And now you have the exact same thing that you would get in Tabular Editor with the DAX preventions, error prevention, formatting, maintenance, performance. And you can click on it and it will take you to Michael's blog on why you should be doing some of these things and should not be doing, what are the best practices as to why this was done. think recently he also updated the semantic link labs that you can create your own rules as well and add that to the library. So if you have your own custom rule, just like a BPA, the current BPA in tabular editor, you can do that. Um, a very nice BPA dashboard that I want to
Hmm.
point out, that somebody from the community, in fact, I think this person is from Microsoft, Romain Casteres, shout out to him. So he built a nice Power BI report on top of this. So what he does is he uses this. So when you run the BPA, there is an option here to save as a data set or something. I forgot what exactly it is, but let's check. You can export it. Yeah, so return data frame, yeah, and you can export it. And if you set the export is equal to true, it will write that as a table to the lake house. And what he did was he built a report on top of that. So you save that, run it over all the data sets that you have in a specific workspace, save that, get the SQL endpoint of that lake house as a parameter, paste that in, and then you have a nice little functioning dashboard or a report where, as you as an
Hmm.
admin tenant or workspace admin, have all that information, right? That what are the problems and how you can fix it and all of that. So it takes it to a whole new level, which it did not exist before, where you're able to monitor and then take actions and then communicate and then schedule and more do fine-grained scheduling and fine-grained um, uh, I guess, optimization as well. Because based on this information, I can again filter out that I'm only interested in the data sets that have these things in that, and then go ahead and fix that. And you can automate fixing part as well. Won't cover that, but that's possible too. Vertipack analyzer that you see in, so let me scroll up so we can see the whole thing. And you get a nice table here. This is the table, and this is the size in memory.
Yep.
And these are the tables, and yeah, all that, the temperature, the column, and all of that. The way I have used this information is, again, production workspace. I have 10 semantic models there. I mean, before this, there was no way to know, unless you open DAX Studio, there was no way to know what is the size of all of my semantic model in memory in a specific workspace, right? Now you can do that, build a nice catalog of, okay, what does my inventory look like? What are my optimization opportunities based on the BPA? If I look at one of the blogs that I wrote on calculating and reducing semantic Power BI dataset using semantic link, where it goes through all of this and then gives you for all the workspaces the dataset name and then percent size of how much it is in by calculated columns, by auto date time, by hierarchy size, and calculate. So low hanging fruits basically that we can say, okay,
Exactly.
in all of my workspaces, these are 20 that we should target and do these things and get the overall size down.
Now, I think if you can go back to that for a quick second, the other now with this, the easiest thing you usually to end up looking at when breaking a lot of this stuff down is going to be cardinality and megabyte size. But if you're going to give a quick summary of like the floats and hierarchy size for people,
Yeah,
what would you say on oh
yeah.
yeah, there you go.
Okay,
Right
there
there,
you go.
yeah. The percent size floats and percent size hierarchy. What do those represent when it
Yeah,
comes to
so
the
the
data set?
percent size float is you likely have a fact column that is very wide and has a decimal type as the data type. Now, if you first thing, if you have high precision floats as the column type, then that is high cardinality, and your overall size of the data set is going to
Mm,
increase. So the action item in this case would be, first look at all those columns, and then either use fixed decimal if those are like currency columns, so that would reduce the cardinality but not lose the precision. You get 4 decimal points, and then check if you do need a float assigned to that column or not. You may just round it off and then reduce the precision and get the overall size down. And then percent hierarchy size, this is especially for high cardinality columns, like key columns or ID columns or row hash or metadata columns or URLs, where Power BI automatically creates a hierarchy for that column, and it can increase the overall size of the data set. Now, you don't need that. Power BI uses that in Excel, in pivot table, and in Power BI, just so that it helps you with with accessing that data. But you don't need that if you're not going to use it for anything else, like an ID column or a key column. You're not going to summarize that for anything. Yeah, you may do it for like count rows, but you're not going to do summarization on top of that, like sum of a key column or ID column. So you don't need
Yep.
that. So you can go to Tabular Editor, and there is a property called is available in MDX in Tabular Editor. You can set it to, by default, it is um, set to false. You can set it to true. And in fact, Semantic Link does that. If we go back, there is a property here called is available MDX somewhere, that it identifies which of the columns has that property available, and then you can automate this process or go to Tabular Editor, set that to true. And what this table is showing is, just by setting that to true, I will be able to reduce the overall size of the semantic model by 17 to 18%. So very low hanging fruit, very low effort, and so that's how it will help.
Exactly.
So definitely take a look at Semantic Link Labs, because a lot of this stuff that we have been using as Power BI developers, Michael has already done that. In fact, we had him on our in our user group just a couple of weeks ago, and he presented about a lot of this stuff. So take a look at this as well, where he talked about how you can migrate existing import or direct query semantic models to direct link, and a lot of the other cool stuff that he is building in Semantic Link Labs as well. Michael and I will be, like I mentioned earlier, Michael and I will be presenting at FabCon in September.
Is that your first time presenting with him?
With him, yes. This will be the first time I'll be
Nice.
presenting with him. Yes, so I presented on Semantic Link in Vegas too, at FabCon Vegas. He couldn't make it that time, but I'm really glad and excited that I'll get a chance to present with him.
That'll be really cool. A good opportunity then, and I think he's one of the smartest people I know for sure.
Absolutely. uh, One little tool that I have developed, it's called Measure Maze, and this is based on like what I have experienced working on very large enterprise projects where you have 50, 60, 100 tables, and you can have thousands of measures that you create for time intelligence, this, that, and all the different metrics. And the challenge that I've always had is like, how do I visualize all of this? How do I know if I change something, how is it going to affect, and what are all those dependencies for all these different measures, calculated tables, calculated columns, and all of that. Yes, in Tabular Editor, you can do that. You can get the dependency, but I wanted to take it a bit further. And so I developed this Python library called Measure Maze for like how complicated it is, where it gives you for all the objects that are within your semantic model. It shows you a nice plot of all the dependencies that are within that. Like in this case, I can see that this total cogs, for example, lot of the other different columns are used for that, And then there is a whole lot of dependency because this cogs is used for 5, 10 other different measures and nested measures within that. So that tells me like what is the centrality, like what's the importance of one particular measure in all the maze that I've created within my semantic model. I can get it for one particular measure as well. So that tells you, okay, for total cogs, it's dependent on these 4 different columns or measures that are
Mm-hmm.
used, and then this is further used by these measures. Can get it one level down and give me what are other ones. So this is the number one, and then there is another one that's a date. Date column is used by obviously my time intelligence. So it's super important. Don't delete that. So that's on my on my block too. And then lastly, the TOMS, which is tabular object model. You can edit a model as well. So semantic link is not just read only. You can make changes to the model. So example is you have direct link semantic model, and as you know, in direct link semantic model, you can only have at least currently you can only have you cannot have spaces in the table names and column names. But
Mm-hmm.
you can change. We've always used the C sharp, right, to replace the names. But in this case, we can use this to say that, hey, wherever you see the underscore, replace that with a space, and then capitalize it or make any other changes. So this can be part of your overall pipeline where you have a medallion architecture, you get all the data in the notebook, you refresh it, and then at the end of it, you will rename all the tables and columns with this. So you have really nice a semantic model that just like import, where you have business friendly names and business friendly descriptions that can be automated as well as a part of your
Now
overall
capitalize it too.
yeah, exactly, you can capitalize it too.
Be title case, because camel case is capitalized without spaces, I think.
Camel, I think camel case is the way I remember it. Camel is like capital C, capital C. So camel is like you do that, but without the space, you're right. And then with the space, I don't know what they call it. Is it
I think it's
Pascal
just
or
called
no?
title,
Title case.
either
Okay,
Pascal
yeah,
or
yeah.
title case.
Title
Well,
case. Yeah.
because you don't technically want every single word capitalized. It's only
Yes.
the reserved words for
Yeah.
that. But I definitely know, like I've done this in Power Query before. There's a special function script that demotes, automatically renames and promotes for you, like in like a little script. But that's only for column headers, not
Yeah.
for the table names or anything else.
Yep.
But yeah, it I like that there's an extra option now to do this in here, because I'm sure somewhere out there there's probably something in tabular editor with C sharp you could do that with. But this doesn't require the external tools or anything else.
Yep.
And it's doing this also across the entire. In theory, you could batch this to probably do a loop and run through all the models if you wanted
Yep.
to in a workspace. Maybe not against the whole tenant, but
Yeah.
I'm sure you could scale this up if you wanted to
Yes.
maybe do a few at a time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I
You
did
can
have
do
one
that.
question here. Is
Yeah.
Gersh just wanted to know, would there be any time, as we're wrapping up, to show any kind of an automation example of something?
I don't have an example here that I can show. I have built this internally for my internal customers as well as externally for others. What I will, however, say that the one that you should absolutely use is Semantic Link has that as well. So with Semantic Link, you can refresh, granularly refresh the data sets, but or the tables as well. But what I would say is that if you, where did it go? Canceling recipient. Yeah, this one, for example. This one lets you uh, refresh not just the table, but the partitions as well. So imagine that you have a complex pipeline where you're only, and I have had this before many times, that I have a table that can only be refreshed on Monday, but refresh everything else for on a different frequency or a different schedule altogether. And there was no good solution unless you use TMSL and then use that TMSL in a pipeline and all that. But with this one, you can add that as the end of your pipeline as a notebook. Include that, and then you have more granular refreshes and more conditional refreshes as well, that you can track it, what has changed, if it has changed, drop that into this JSON object, and then refresh it based on whatever condition you set.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Excellent. Yeah, thankfully the like the scripting for this is usually no more than like a couple of lines tops.
Exactly. Yeah. And the way you would uh, use any of this is develop the notebook, develop your pipeline, and then you would just drop that notebook as at the end of the pipeline or during the pipeline as just a notebook activity. So I have pipeline activity, and then you look up for notebook and add that notebook as an activity, and there you have it. Once all your upstream tasks are finished, that notebook will be run based on the condition, and then you can do all your automation and optimization based on the logic that's in that notebook.
Hey, yeah, even exactly, just build it into a pipeline.
Yeah.
It's it's funny the kind of like back and forth like mentally this has, because he again at one point like the model was kind of it's the end of the road. Like the only thing left to do is you report off of it, but you have all of these pipes that lead into it, which include some data pipelines. Goes to the
Yeah.
semantic model. Semantic model gets access via the semantic link that's being written to a lakehouse. The lakehouse feeds back into a notebook. Inside of a pipeline, that pipeline feeds into a metric and a goal, which then allows for reporting. But it it's in a way I think like it adds a lot of options, but it's almost like a web now at this point of like it it gives you a lot of flexibility. I do think with Fabric having so many entrances and exits for data now, like you do have to be careful in the curation to make sure that you don't cross any wires, or
Yeah.
it's not even data siloing anymore, but it's also like there's I don't even know what the new term might be, but you're still reproducing a lot of stuff because there's a lot
Yes.
of things going back and forth where nothing's broken, but you're you go back into teams doing things that are in duplicate, where
Yeah.
you're doubling effort because you don't realize something else is available, which can be a
Yep.
problem. But I just like that there's so many ways to both consume and process data in and out from basically any source that you want to. So it gives a lot of degrees of freedom for that stuff. But I can imagine in a couple of years there's going to be a lot of like we need to figure out how to clean up our environment. We don't know what is there or should be, and it's because every new technology both creates solutions but also creates
Yeah.
new problems, right?
Problems, exactly.
Yeah,
And
they
especially with
and
Fabric,
yeah,
you have so many
yeah.
artifacts and there's so many ways to do the same thing, 10 different ways, that there is just so much. I mean, if you look at my notebook, my tenant, my trial tenant, I probably have just a notebook named Notebook One, like hundreds of those in different
Mhm,
workspaces.
exactly. As we're starting to get up on the hour here, is there anything left you'd want to either show or discuss to kind of put a bow on it, as we wrap up?
One last thing that I want to show is, so there is a ton of stuff developed in the community by Microsoft as well. The one that I have used and I really like, because this was always a challenge, was visualize Power BI refresh using semantic link. Because previously, what you had to do something like this was you would have to use SQL Server Profiler, get the run the refresh, get the profile, save the profile, use the template, get it in a template, and all of that. With a notebook that Phil has created here, all of that is just one click away. All he has he's given everything. I mean, everything is scripted here. All you have to do is give the name of the data set, and it gives you a nice visualization of how your table, the semantic model, is refreshed, which is huge because you can use that to further optimize. And things like these is what I think the Power BI developers, especially the enterprise Power BI developers, will benefit from significantly, because all of these different tools that have been available are now more accessible for you. So um, yeah, I wish there was a way. Maybe I can start doing that and curate all these different resources that we have in one single repo. So for the community to access, that would be cool.
Like, yeah, I keep thinking I'm gonna make one of those. Like, no, that's Mike Carlos' job. That's what he loves to do. he and he like he'll build it a week before things are even announced, and he'll just like, oh, but
Yeah.
by the way, the URL is now publicly available. I just turned it on. So like, all right,
Yeah.
I can't
Give
beat
him
you
a
to the
nudge.
punch of
Give him a
that.
nudge.
Yeah, exactly. Excellent. Anything else to show? Otherwise, I can flip back to the
Yeah,
discussion
that is
screen.
it. Unless there are questions. Yep.
Yeah, so as we're wrapping up, I don't think I see any right now. Oh, here there is one more from Gersh pop up. Can git commit a trigger to a pipeline?
It can git commit a trigger a pipeline. So you can. That is possible because there are APIs, I believe, that are available. What I don't know if there are APIs that support service principal yet for the pipeline. So
Well,
that would
Power
be
Automate
something.
maybe, right?
Power Automate
Because
be able to do.
I haven't built it, but I mean Power Automate can trigger a lot of start something. Like you can trigger a semantic model refresh, you can trigger data flow refresh. There's a lot of triggers that you can have an action with Power Automate. So I wouldn't be surprised if there. I'd say like 95% chance you using Power Automate, you can detect a change in a Git repository of something and then trigger something in Power BI, which would make sure that that pipeline started refreshing or running its
Yeah.
process.
Mhm. Yeah, that would
But
be part of your
otherwise,
build process. Yeah, exactly. Build an integration process where you do that. But I think it should be possible. Yep.
oh, and just some compliments. Greg just wanted to say it's impressive to see a master at work, a tour de force for the semantic link for sure. So
Thanks, Rick.
I would agree. There's a lot of really cool and bits of information shared, and I think this was good to do a deep dive because it I've been kind of saying since this was announced at Bill no FabCon. All the new stuff when they announced it at FabCon, and the thing that got me excited the most really was Semantic Link in terms of the possibilities. And
Yeah.
I'm still not in the real world. I don't have that many clients that I'm using too many things yet with, but like I see the depth, the potential
Yeah.
from this, and it's the only thing that I think we're just gonna get those repositories where we're gonna have so many scripts that are from an admin perspective, like, oh yeah, you used to do this for 5 hours a week. Here's a script. Set this notebook to run once a day. Just wait to get an alert for you to do
Yep.
something. So
Exactly.
from monitoring, tuning, performance, tons of things to look at, and basically just data to take out of it, and then have it automatically make changes for you. So really cool stuff. And for anybody watching, like check in the description and check out Sandeep's blog. So give that a look. But any other closing remarks or anything you have for today?
That is it. Follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I just published a blog post yesterday. I talk a lot about semantic link. So AI skills just came out the day before. I dropped a blog yesterday on how you can use semantic link with the new AI skills. So there is a lot of cool stuff that's happening right now in the fabric space and semantic. I love semantic link. So as you can see, so definitely give me a follow so that you and I can learn together. So,
Absolutely, yes. And I'll let you know if anybody has any questions or comments coming up as well on this chat. But thank you
absolutely.
so much for coming on.
Thank you, Reed.
Feel free to let me know at any time in the future you have another session or talk with most of my guests. I love to bring them back on again. And I'm happy to have finally done a deep dive on this one because I think it's a really
Absolutely.
topical topic this year for sure. So
Yeah,
thanks for that.
absolutely.
And other, yeah.
Yeah, I would suggest Michael Kowalski as well. So he presented in our user group last a couple of weeks ago, but he has really cool stuff that he is building. So he would be a really nice guest to have on your show as well, if that works out for him and for you. I would recommend that.
I had him a couple of years ago for his the I forget the exact name, but it was the best practices tool that he built,
Yeah,
and all of that. But since you're going to be presenting with him, feel free to mention that to him
I
if you
will.
want to, and
Yeah,
see if he's interested. And also at some point, if either of you, because I can do two people plus
yeah,
me, I can do a 3 session stream. So either of you want to come on together,
Yeah,
once you've shown your session a few times, I'd happy to have you both back on
yeah.
as well.
Let's do that.
The joint sessions are fantastic.
Let's do that. Sounds good. Thanks,
Cool.
Reed.
Then
Nice
yeah,
talking with
absolutely.
you.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Yep, you do. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. And if you want to help support this channel, take a look at our channel memberships or our merchandise store for cool swag. And last but not least, please consider sharing this video on your social media platform of choice to help our channel grow. So, until next time.